Okay guys, I just wanted to briefly go over complex sentences and what they contain and how you form them. So I'm just going to start with two sentences. I'm going to say, we rang the doorbell. Okay, and then what happened after we rang the doorbell? No one answered it. Alright, so you have two simple sentences, but if you're writing this or you're talking about this, it sounds really choppy. We rang the doorbell. No one answered it. You want to have more to it. You want to make that one sentence. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing that you learned was to make a compound sentence, and you might have said, we rang the doorbell, and then you might have put a comma after that, after we rang the doorbell, and you might say, but no one answered it. And that would be absolutely fine if you did it that way. That'd make a nice compound sentence. But you can do different things. You can make complex sentences out of it too, and that's kind of the focus today, is complex sentences. So how will we make that complex? Well, to be a complex sentence, we have to have one dependent clause. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put that in red. So we'd have one dependent clause plus one independent clause, okay? And those are different types of clauses. Okay, so we have one independent clause up there. Now, remember, dependent clause can stand alone. An independent clause cannot stand alone. Or, I'm sorry, I messed that up. A dependent clause cannot stand alone. Over here, it cannot be by itself in a sentence. And now an independent clause can. It can be by itself. So, up here, we rang the doorbell. That's an independent clause. That can be alone. No one answered it. Also, an independent clause. It can be alone. When we combine the two, we rang the doorbell, no one answered it, we have a compound sentence. So how do we make this a dependent clause? Well, we add a subordinating conjunction. And I've talked before about subordinating conjunctions, and there's a whole list that you guys have links to of words that you can use. So we'll go to those right now. Alright, here's a list right here. All I did was a simple search. I just searched list of subordinating conjunctions, and you can find so many things online. You know, right here, after, although, as, because, before, even if, even though, all of these words are all subordinating conjunctions that can start one of these dependent clauses. So I'm just going to simply copy right here, and I'm going to go over, and I'm going to go back to this sheet, and I'm just going to put all these right in here. Okay, and here's my chart of all these subordinating conjunctions that I can use to start a dependent clause. So now I take we rang the doorbell, and I just choose one of these words. Was it after we rang the doorbell? Was it before we rang the doorbell? Okay, we have all these things that we can use. Although, looks like it could sound pretty good. Although we rang the doorbell, no one answered it. I think I'm going to go ahead and use that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, and I'm going to put my dependent clause first. I'm going to put that in red still. Although we rang the doorbell, comma, and then I'll go back and I'll show you how I still have an independent clause here. No one answered it. Okay, so now I have a dependent clause. Although we rang the doorbell, I have an independent clause, no one answered it. That makes a complex sentence. Okay, that's what makes your complex sentence. Now, can you go the other way? Can you say, no one answered it, although we rang the doorbell? Yeah, that's fine. Sometimes you have to listen to the sentence. I don't know if that sounds as nice. No one answered it, although we rang the doorbell. But you could say that. And so in that case, you just have your independent clause at the beginning. No one answered it. Okay, that's a clause by itself. And then move on to although we rang the doorbell. Like I said, I think I would put although we rang the doorbell at the beginning of that sentence. It just kind of sounds better. But other sentences, it might not matter as much. It might sound better if it's at the end. Notice too that I no longer have a comma, because when the subordinate clause or the dependent clause comes at the end, you do not need a comma. Okay, so that's just a quick video to kind of remind you about complex sentences, how they work, what they look like, how you make them is kind of the key there, just by putting one of these subordinating conjunctions out in front. Okay, that is all.